Single mother encounters cave dweller couple living in isolation. What they do. Rachel Morrison felt her heart racing as she held baby Ethan in her arms, watching her two young daughters walking beside her, growing more tired by the minute. What should have been a simple hike along the Deer Ridge Wilderness Trail had turned into a nightmare when they took the wrong path nearly 4 hours ago. That's when she spotted smoke rising through the trees. There were no houses or lodges in that area, she was certain. Still, she decided to investigate, holding tightly to her middle daughter's hand while the oldest carried the backpack with their few remaining supplies. "Mom, I'm thirsty," murmured 5-year-old Olivia, dragging her feet across the uneven ground. "I know, sweetheart. Let's see if there's someone up ahead who can help us," Rachel replied, trying to keep her voice calm despite the growing desperation in her chest. What she saw when she rounded a rock formation left her completely speechless. In front of a natural cave built with stacked stones stood a man and woman dressed in clothes that looked like they came from a movie about cave people. The tall, bearded man held a wooden spear with a sharp tip, while the woman with long, unkempt hair positioned herself half-hidden behind him. Rachel blinked several times, thinking she was seeing things due to exhaustion and dehydration. But no, they were really there. The couple watched her with equal surprise, as if she were an apparition. "Excuse me," Rachel said, taking a cautious step forward. "We're lost. Could you help us?" The man tightened his grip on the spear shaft, exchanging quick glances with the woman beside him. She murmured something quietly to him, but Rachel couldn't understand. It seemed to be English, but spoken strangely, almost like an unknown dialect. "Please," Rachel insisted, noticing how her youngest daughter Olivia was clinging to her leg in fear. "We just want to get back to the main road. We've been here for hours." The primitive woman took another step back, disappearing almost completely into the shadow of the cave entrance. The man remained in a defensive position, but Rachel noticed something strange in his eyes. There was an intelligence there that didn't match his wild appearance. "You understand what I'm saying, don't you?" she asked directly, watching his reaction. The man averted his eyes for a split second, an almost imperceptible gesture that confirmed Rachel's suspicions. They understood English perfectly. At that moment, baby Ethan began to cry, a loud, desperate cry that echoed through the forest. Rachel tried to calm him, rocking him gently, but he was hungry, and there was nothing left to give him. "Mommy, Ethan is crying really hard," said Madison, the 7-year-old eldest daughter, with teary eyes. Then something extraordinary happened. The primitive woman slowly emerged from her hiding place and walked to an area near the stones. She picked some orange-colored wild fruits and, with careful movements, placed them on a smooth stone near where Rachel was standing. Then, without saying a word, she quickly returned to the man who hadn't relaxed his defensive posture for a moment. Rachel looked at the fruits, then at her daughters watching her hopefully. She recognized those fruits. They were wild cashews, perfectly edible. How did that woman know exactly what to give a hungry child? "Thank you," Rachel said loudly, picking up the fruits and offering a small portion to Olivia, who devoured it immediately. The gesture had been kind, almost maternal. But why would a woman living primitively have that kind of knowledge and instinct for caring for children? As the girls ate the fruit, Rachel continued observing the couple. There was something deeply wrong with the entire situation. Their clothes, though rustic, were well maintained. The man's spear was perfectly balanced, made by someone who understood tools, and the way the woman had selected exactly the right fruits demonstrated knowledge that went beyond wild instinct. "We'll stay here until dark if necessary," said Rachel, making a risky decision. "My daughters are too tired to keep walking aimlessly." The man whispered something to the woman, and this time Rachel managed to catch a few words. It was indeed English, but they were trying to disguise their accent. "You're American," she stated, not as a question, but as a certainty. The couple exchanged another glance, more tense this time. The woman shook her head almost imperceptibly, as if telling the man not to answer. Rachel sat on a nearby rock, settling the baby in her lap and allowing the girls to rest beside her. She wasn't leaving without answers. Something very strange was happening there, and her motherly instinct was on high alert. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. When the sun began to set, painting the sky orange between the treetops, the primitive man finally relaxed his posture. He leaned his spear against the rock wall and sat near the cave entrance, but still keeping his distance from Rachel and the children. The woman disappeared into the cave and returned with a clay bowl containing fresh water. She placed it on the same rock where she had left the fruits, then quickly returned to her position beside her companion. "Olivia, Madison, come have some water," called Rachel, testing the couple's reaction. When the girls approached the bowl, the primitive woman watched their every move with an attention that went far beyond simple curiosity. Her eyes lit up when Olivia smiled gratefully after drinking the fresh water, and Rachel noticed a deep emotion crossing her face. "You've taken care of children before," Rachel said directly to the woman, who immediately hid once again behind the man. He murmured something sharply to her, but Rachel clearly caught the words "can't" and "dangerous." "Dangerous for whom?" asked Rachel. "For you or for us?" The silence that followed was charged with tension. The baby Ethan had finally fallen asleep, and the two girls were quietly playing with small stones they found on the ground. The normality of that moment contrasted surrealistically with the strangeness of the entire situation. "My name is Rachel," she said, deciding to try a different approach. "These are my daughters, Madison, Olivia, and this is Ethan. We mean no danger to you." The man studied her for a long moment, as if weighing every word she had said. Finally, he pointed to himself and said something that sounded like Derek. Then he pointed to the woman and said, "Jessica." Rachel doubted those were their real names, but at least it was a start. "Derek and Jessica," she repeated. "Have you lived here long?" Derek held up 2 fingers, then 3, making gestures that seemed to indicate time, but in a vague and confusing way. Rachel realized he was trying to give the impression that he didn't fully understand her questions, but the gestures were too elaborate for someone truly primitive. "Where did you learn to make these tools?" she asked, pointing to the spear and other items she saw scattered near the cave. This time it was Jessica who reacted, saying something quickly to Derek in a language that was definitely not primitive. Rachel clearly caught the word care and something about too much suspicion. "Are you afraid I'll call someone?" Rachel ventured. "Are you hiding from something?" The impact of those words was immediate. Derek stood up abruptly, grabbing the spear again, while Jessica retreated into the cave. Tension returned to the air like a heavy cloud. "I won't call anyone," Rachel said quickly, raising her hands in a peace gesture. "I wouldn't even know how. My cell phone has had no signal for hours." The words cell phone and signal caused another interesting reaction. Derek relaxed slightly, but his eyes fixed on Rachel's small backpack, as if assessing what kind of technology she might be carrying. "Look," said Rachel, opening the backpack and showing its contents. Some diapers, empty bottles, cookie crumbs, and her dead phone. "There's nothing here that can harm you." The sight of the bottles made Jessica come out of the cave again, approaching cautiously. She pointed to the items and then to baby Ethan, making a clear gestural question. "Yes, they're his," Rachel answered. "But I have no more formula. It ran out 2 hours ago." Jessica disappeared into the cave again and returned with something that made Rachel's eyes widen in astonishment. It was a modern plastic container holding what appeared to be commercial powdered formula. "Where did you get this?" asked Rachel, unable to hide the surprise in her voice. Derek and Jessica exchanged anxious looks, realizing they had made a serious mistake. How would supposedly primitive people have access to modern manufactured products? "You don't live here all the time," stated Rachel, the puzzle pieces beginning to fit together. "You go to the city. You know exactly what modern life is like." The silence that followed was deafening. Even the children seemed to sense the tension in the air, stopping their play to watch the adults. "Please," said Jessica for the first time, with a hoarse but clearly educated voice, Don't tell." It was the first time she had spoken in clear Portuguese, and the accent revealed formal education. Rachel felt a chill run down her spine. "Tell what?" she asked gently. "That you're hiding? From whom? Why?" Derek put his hand on Jessica's shoulder, shaking his head negatively, but she seemed to be reaching her breaking point. We can't go back," said Jessica, her eyes welling up. "We can't explain. You wouldn't understand." "Try to explain," insisted Rachel. "I have 3 small children. I understand more about running from difficult things than you might think." Those words touched something deep in Jessica. She looked at Rachel's 3 children with an expression of pain and longing that broke the mother's heart. "You had children," said Rachel, not as a question, but as a statement. The sob that escaped Jessica confirmed everything. Derek immediately wrapped her in his arms, murmuring words of comfort in perfectly clear Portuguese. "Where is your child?" Rachel asked delicately. "He's no longer with us," replied Derek, his voice laden with deep pain. "That's why we're here. That's why we can't go back." Rachel felt her heart tighten. She was beginning to understand that she wasn't dealing with primitive or dangerous people, but rather a couple destroyed by a tragedy that had made them flee civilization. "How long ago?" she asked softly. 2 years, Jessica answered between sobs. 2 years, 3 months, and 12 days. The precision with which she counted the time revealed the depth of her pain. Rachel stood up slowly, still holding the baby, and took a few steps toward the couple. "You don't have to go through this alone," she said. "I know what it's like to carry a pain that feels impossible to bear." Derek looked at her in surprise. "Do you think you're the only ones who lost everything and had to start over?" continued Rachel. "I lost my previous life too. My daughter's father left me when I was 8 months pregnant after discovering Ethan wasn't his son. He found out through a test he requested himself because he suspected me." Rachel's brutal honesty created an unexpected bridge between her and the couple. Jessica stopped crying, watching her with new eyes. "But the difference is, I had no choice. I had 3 children depending on me," Rachel continued. "You chose to run away, but running doesn't erase the pain, it only hides it." "You don't understand," said Derek, his voice rough. "What happened was our fault. We failed as parents. We don't deserve a second chance." "Every parent feels guilty when something happens to their child," Rachel replied. "Even when there was nothing that could have been done differently." "But there was," Jessica suddenly shouted, surprising everyone. "There was something we could have done differently. If I hadn't been so focused on work, if I'd paid more attention, if, Rachel interrupted firmly. "I live with that every day too. If I'd realized sooner that my husband was growing suspicious, if I'd been a better wife, if I hadn't gotten pregnant by another man." The shock on Derek and Jessica's faces was evident. "That's right," said Rachel. "Ethan isn't my ex-husband's son. I made a mistake, a terrible human failing, and now my children are paying the price. But you know what I learned? That running from guilt solves nothing. Facing reality and trying to build something better than what we had before, that's what makes sense." A profound silence fell between them. Even the children seemed absorbed in their own play, unaware of the weight of the confessions being made. "How can you look at him and not feel guilty?" asked Jessica, looking at baby Ethan in Rachel's arms. "Who said I don't?" Rachel replied with a sad smile. "I feel guilty every day, but he's not to blame for my mistake, and my guilt doesn't diminish the love I feel for him." "It's different," murmured Derek. "Our son. He's gone because of our choices." "And you think hiding here in the wilderness will bring him back?" Rachel asked. "Or that it will prevent other children from needing you?" "Other children?" repeated Jessica, confused. "You knew exactly what to give my daughters when we arrived here. You immediately recognized that Ethan was hungry. You have natural instincts for caring for children. That doesn't come from nowhere." Rachel paused, watching their reaction. "What profession did you practice before coming here?" Derek and Jessica exchanged glances once more, but this time there was something different in their eyes. The resistance was fading. "I was a pediatrician," Jessica said quietly. "I worked at Children's Medical Center in Washington." "And I was a child psychologist," Derek added. "I treated children with family trauma." Rachel felt as if she'd been punched in the stomach. Two professionals specialized in caring for children, living like primitives in the wilderness, running from their own skills and vocation. "You dedicated your lives to saving children," she said, barely able to disguise the indignation in her voice. "And now you're here hiding while other children need you?" "You don't understand," Derek exploded. "We were good at what we did, but we failed our own son. How can we help other families if we couldn't protect our own?" "Because you're human," Rachel shouted back, making the baby stir in her arms. "You're not gods. You can't control everything that happens in the world." Olivia started crying, frightened by the shouting. Immediately, Jessica approached the girl, kneeling beside her and speaking in a soft tone. "Don't cry, sweetheart. The adults are just talking about sad things, but everything's okay." The naturalness with which Jessica comforted the child was impressive. Within seconds, Olivia stopped crying and even smiled at the primitive woman. "Look what you just did," said Rachel gently. "That's a gift. That doesn't get lost just because you went through a tragedy." Jessica looked at Olivia playing again, then at her own hands that had comforted the child without even thinking. "It's been 2 years since she began, but couldn't finish the sentence. 2 years since you've done what you were born to do," Rachel completed. 2 years wasted on self-pity when you could be honoring your son's memory by helping other children. "It's not that simple," protested Derek, but his voice had lost its conviction. "Of course it's not simple," Rachel agreed. "Nothing worthwhile is simple. Do you think it was simple for me to raise 3 children alone after my world fell apart? Do you think it's simple to wake up every day knowing people look at Ethan and wonder who his father is?" She paused, taking a deep breath. "But you know what I discovered. That pain doesn't lessen when you run from it. It just gets heavier. The only way to make it lighter is to turn it into something that makes sense." "And how do you do that?" asked Jessica, genuinely curious. "By being the best mother I can be, every single day, to honor the love I have for my children, even with all the complicated circumstances that brought us here." Derek sat on a nearby rock, dropping his head into his hands. "Our son's name was Daniel," he said after a long silence. "He was 6 years old. He was curious, smart, asked about everything, wanted to be a doctor like Mommy." "Tell me about him," requested Rachel, sitting nearby. "He loved animals," continued Derek, a sad smile appearing on his face. "He always brought injured little creatures home. Jessica taught him how to care for them. She said he'd make a great veterinarian." "Or a pediatrician like her," added Jessica. "He had incredible patience with younger children. At the playground, he always helped the little ones who were afraid of the slide." Rachel observed how the two transformed when speaking about their son. The pain was still there, but there was also deep love and genuine pride. "He sounds like he was a wonderful child," she said. "You must have been amazing parents." "We weren't," said Jessica bitterly. "If we had been, he'd still be here." "What happened?" asked Rachel delicately. The silence that followed was heavy with pain. Derek and Jessica exchanged looks as if deciding whether they could trust this stranger who had invaded their refuge. "It was a Saturday," began Jessica slowly. "I was on duty at the hospital. Derek had a session with a new patient. We left Daniel with the babysitter like we always did." "The babysitter was trustworthy," continued Derek. "Barbara. She'd taken care of him since he was a baby. We trusted her completely." "But that day, Barbara got an emergency call," said Jessica. "Her mother had taken ill. She called us, but I was in emergency surgery and Derek was with a patient. Neither of us saw the calls." "She should have taken Daniel with her, or waited until she could reach us," said Derek. "But Barbara thought it would be quick. She asked the 16-year-old neighbor to watch him for an hour." Rachel began to understand where the story was heading, and her heart tightened. "The neighbor was responsible," continued Jessica. "But she was just a teenager. Daniel asked to play in the backyard, she let him. He was used to playing alone there, it was a safe place. But that day, the back gate had a broken latch," said Derek, his voice trembling. "Something we didn't know about. The wind pushed the gate open, and Daniel ran after the ball that had rolled into the street." Rachel closed her eyes, bracing for what would come next. "The driver didn't even see him in time," whispered Jessica. "Daniel was small, and there was a parked car that blocked the view. It was an accident. No one was to blame except us. You couldn't have known about the broken gate, said Rachel softly. But we should have checked, insisted Derek. We should have been at home. We should have been better, more present parents. You were hard-working parents, dedicated to saving other children, Rachel countered. That doesn't make you bad parents. Yes, it does, said Jessica. Because in the end, our obsession with helping other people's children cost us our own son. Or perhaps, said Rachel carefully, you were exactly the kind of parents Daniel was proud to have. Parents who dedicated their lives to making the world a better place for all children. You're trying to make us feel better, said Derek, but it doesn't work. We live with this every day. I'm not trying to make you feel better, said Rachel firmly. I'm trying to make you understand that running from reality won't bring Daniel back, but using your pain to prevent other families from going through what you went through, that would be a way to honor his memory. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. The sky had darkened completely, and the night chill was beginning to settle in. Rachel noticed her daughters were starting to shiver, but she didn't want to interrupt this conversation that she felt was crucial for everyone present. Can you shelter us for the night? She asked. I can't take the children back on the trail in the dark. Jessica and Derek exchanged glances again, and Rachel realized they were facing a dilemma. Taking her and the children into their home would mean completely breaking the facade they had maintained for 2 years. The cave is large, said Jessica finally. There's room for everyone. But you'll have to stop pretending you're primitive, Rachel finished, and maybe it really is time to stop this performance. It's not a performance, protested Derek. It's our new life. It's who we are now. No, this is who you're trying to be to escape who you really are, Rachel corrected. But the truth is you can't stop being a pediatrician and child psychologist. It's in your nature. That's why you instinctively cared for my daughters. Jessica sighed heavily and gestured for everyone to follow her into the cave. When they entered, Rachel almost fainted from surprise. The interior of the cave had been transformed into a sophisticated living space. There was simple but functional furniture, a cooking area with a gas stove, shelves with books and even some electronic equipment powered by solar energy. You're not living primitively, said Rachel, observing everything around her. You're living minimally but with all modern comforts. It's easier to maintain the facade when we get occasional visitors, explained Derek. Most people who pass by see the cave entrance, get scared by our appearance, and leave without asking questions. But you expected me to do the same thing, said Rachel. What you didn't count on was a desperate mother who had no choice but to stay. And a mother who asks too many questions, added Jessica with a small smile. Rachel settled the children in a comfortable area with cushions and blankets that Jessica had provided. It was impressive how the woman knew exactly what to do to make the 3 children feel safe and welcomed. You have children visiting here regularly, observed Rachel, noticing how the space was prepared to receive children. No, said Jessica quickly. You're the first in 2 years. Then why do you know exactly where to keep makeshift toys, how to make comfortable beds for children of different ages, and have powdered milk stocked? Derek and Jessica exchanged glances once again. It was evident that Rachel had discovered something they didn't want to admit. Sometimes Barbara comes to visit us, said Derek finally. She feels guilty about what happened, even knowing it wasn't her fault. She brings her young grandchildren to spend the day with us. Barbara still works with you in some way, concluded Rachel. She's your connection to the outside world. She does shopping for us in the city, admitted Jessica. Brings news, medications when we need them. But mostly she brings her children to play here. Because you can't stay away from children, said Rachel. It's impossible for you. It's who you are. Barbara's grandchildren love coming here, said Derek, a tenderness appearing in his voice. They think it's an adventure. We teach them to fish, to recognize plants, to make small objects with twigs and stones. You're playing at being an alternative family, said Rachel. But still, you're being the professionals you always were. It's different, insisted Jessica. Here there's no pressure, no real responsibility. If something goes wrong, the real parents are nearby. And that's exactly the problem, said Rachel. You're afraid of real responsibility. You're afraid to truly care again. The silence that followed was tense. The children had fallen asleep quickly, exhausted from the long day full of discoveries. The soft sound of their breathing created an intimate atmosphere in the cave, lit by oil lamps. If you don't want to return to medicine, that's fine, said Rachel softly, but at least stop hiding. There are other ways to help children. Like what? Asked Jessica. Alternative education, social projects, therapeutic recreation, suggested Rachel. You could create something new, something that honors Daniel's memory, by helping children who need a different kind of care. That would still mean taking responsibility for other lives, said Derek. Yes, it would, agreed Rachel. And do you know why that's important? Because taking responsibility for other lives is what makes us human. It's what connects us to each other. It's what gives meaning to our existence. What if we fail again? Asked Jessica, her voice small. Then you'll have failed trying to help someone, replied Rachel. That's better than succeeding at trying nothing. Derek stood up and walked to a small shelf where there were some photographs. He picked up one of them and brought it to show Rachel. In the photo, a blond boy of about 6 was smiling broadly, holding a small kitten in his arms. Behind him, Jessica and Derek appeared smiling and proud. He would have been a great older brother to your children, said Derek, watching the 3 little ones sleeping. He would have loved teaching them things, added Jessica. Daniel loved being the oldest in any group. He liked protecting and caring for the younger ones. Then honor that, said Rachel. Be the older brother he would have been to other children who need protection and care. You talk as if it were easy, said Jessica. No, I talk as someone who had to restart life from scratch with 3 small children, corrected Rachel. I know it's not easy, but I also know it's possible. How did you do it? Asked Derek, genuinely curious. How did you manage to rebuild your life after losing everything? Rachel took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts. In the beginning, I just survived. 1 day at a time. Sometimes 1 hour at a time, she began. I'd wake up in the morning and the only thing that motivated me was knowing that the children needed me. And when the guilt became unbearable? Asked Jessica. I remembered they weren't to blame for my mistakes, said Rachel, and that if I drowned in guilt, they would be the ones to suffer. So I turned guilt into motivation to be a better mother than I had been a wife. But you didn't lose a child, said Derek. Your pain is different from ours. That's true, admitted Rachel, but the guilt is the same. The feeling of having failed as a human being is the same. The desire to disappear and never have to face the consequences of our mistakes is the same. She looked at Daniel's face in the photograph. The difference is that you had the option to run away. I didn't, and now I realize that was a blessing. Why? Asked Jessica. Because running away solves nothing. It only postpones the pain, said Rachel. You spent 2 years trying not to feel, trying not to care, trying not to truly live, and that didn't bring Daniel back. It only wasted 2 years of your lives. We weren't wasting, protested Derek. We were healing. You were hiding, corrected Rachel firmly, and the proof is that you still can't talk about Daniel without falling apart inside. If you had truly healed, you could honor his memory without feeling guilty for being alive. The silence that followed was heavy, but different from before. It had a reflective quality to it, as if Jessica and Derek were really considering Rachel's words. What do you suggest we do? Asked Jessica finally. Go back home, said Rachel without hesitation. Face reality, accept the pain, and then decide how you want to use this experience to do something that matters. It's not that simple, said Derek. We sold the house, left our jobs. We have nothing left in the city. Then rebuild, said Rachel. I rebuilt my life 3 times. Once when Madison was born, another when Olivia was born, and again when Ethan was born, and my world completely fell apart. Each time I thought it would be impossible. Each time I discovered I was stronger than I imagined. You at least had your daughters as motivation, said Jessica. What do we have? You have all the children in the world who need professionals like you, said Rachel. You have the knowledge and experience that can make a difference in the lives of families going through hardships. And you have Daniel's pain, which can be transformed into compassion for other families who've lost children, she added. You can be the kind of professionals you wish you had met when you were suffering. That's an interesting idea, murmured Derek. It's more than interesting, said Rachel. It's necessary. There are thousands of families out there who need professionals who truly understand what it means to lose a child. Professionals who can look heartbroken parents in the eye and say, I understand, because I've been through it too. Jessica began to cry silently. But this time they weren't tears of despair. They were tears of recognition, of possibility. We could create a different project, she said slowly. Something that combined our medical and psychological knowledge with our experience of loss. Exactly, said Rachel, feeling hope growing within her. You could be pioneers in a new approach to family therapy for child bereavement. But what if we fail again? Asked Derek, but his voice had lost its previous resistance. So you're going to fail trying to help other people, repeated Rachel. And that would still be better than succeeding at doing nothing. The conversation was interrupted by a soft sound. Olivia had woken up and was whispering something to Madison. Soon both girls were awake, looking around the cave with renewed curiosity. Mommy, this place is really cool, said Madison. Can I play here tomorrow? Can we stay a little longer? Asked Olivia. I like the uncle and aunt. Rachel looked at Jessica and Derek, seeing how they melted upon hearing the children's words. It was impossible for them to resist the natural call to care for little ones. What do you think? Asked Rachel. Do you want to spend one more day with visitors before making a decision about the future? Yes, said Jessica immediately, then looked at Derek for confirmation. Yes, he agreed. But maybe it's time we stop pretending we're primitive people. Really? Asked Olivia excitedly. Are you going to talk normally with us? We will, answered Jessica, laughing for the first time since Rachel had arrived. And maybe we can teach you some cool things too. What kind of things? Asked Madison. Well, I know a lot about how to care for people who are hurt, said Jessica, and Uncle Derek knows a lot about how to help people who are sad. Are you real doctors? Asked Olivia, impressed. We are, said Derek. Or at least, we used to be. Why did you stop being doctors? Asked Madison with children's natural curiosity. Jessica and Derek exchanged glances, and Rachel saw they were facing their first opportunity to explain their story to children, something they would have to do many times if they decided to return to working with families. We had a little son, like you, began Jessica carefully, but he had to go to heaven too early, and that made us very, very sad. So sad that you forgot how to be doctors? Asked Olivia. We didn't forget, said Derek, but we became afraid to care for other children because we were afraid of getting sad again if something happened. But you took care of us, observed Madison, and we're fine. That's true, said Jessica, smiling. You are fine, and taking care of you reminded us how good it feels to help children. So are you going to be doctors again? Asked Olivia. Maybe, said Derek. What do you think? Would you like to have doctors who understand how it feels to be very sad sometimes? Yes, both girls said in unison. That would be so cool. Rachel watched the interaction with a warmed heart. Jessica and Derek had a natural talent for communicating with children in a way that was both honest and age-appropriate. They were exactly the kind of professionals the world needed. Well, if you're going to spend one more day here, how about we make plans? Suggested Rachel. You can show the girls what it's like to live here, and we can talk about how it might be possible for you to gradually return to the outside world. You can't just go back to your old life, she said, addressing the couple. But you can create something new, something that incorporates both the wisdom you gained from loss and the professional knowledge you've always had. Do you have a specific idea in mind? Asked Derek. Actually, I have several, said Rachel, but first, I want to better understand what you've learned here in these 2 years. What skills have you developed? What perspective have you gained? We learn to live more simply, said Jessica, to value every small moment, to find joy in basic things like a carefully prepared meal or a starry night. We've learned that nature has its own rhythm that can't be rushed, added Derek, "that some healings happen slowly in their own time." "And we've learned it's possible to live without the constant hurry of the city," said Jessica, "without the pressure to produce results all the time." "These are valuable lessons," said Rachel. "Imagine offering this to families in crisis, a space where they can slow down, reconnect with what truly matters, and begin the healing process without external pressure." "A kind of therapeutic retreat," murmured Derek, his eyes shining with a budding idea. "Exactly," said Rachel. "You could create a family recovery center that combines traditional therapy with simple living in nature. For families who've experienced loss, trauma, crises that require a different kind of care. This could really work," said Jessica slowly. "We could use our medical and psychological knowledge, but in a more human, more natural environment." "And you've already tested the concept, in a way," observed Rachel. "With Barbara and her grandchildren's visits. With our arrival here, you know how to create a welcoming environment for families." "But it would require extensive planning," said Derek, beginning to think like a professional again. "Licenses, proper infrastructure, partnerships with other professionals." "Of course," agreed Rachel. "It wouldn't be something that happens overnight, but it would be a project with real purpose, built on your genuine experience." "And Daniel? Would Daniel be proud of this?" asked Jessica hesitantly. "Daniel would be proud to see you helping other families stay together," said Rachel with certainty. "He'd be proud to see that the pain of losing him has turned into healing for others." The baby Ethan chose that moment to wake up, beginning to murmur softly. Rachel stood to pick him up, but Jessica was already moving. "May I?" she asked, extending her arms. Rachel hesitated for only a second, then handed the baby to Jessica. Seeing an experienced pediatrician holding her son was both reassuring and moving. "Hi, little one," Jessica murmured to Ethan, who immediately stopped complaining. "You're a very clever boy, aren't you? You know exactly how to win people's hearts." "He has that gift," said Rachel, smiling. "Even with all the confusion about paternity, nobody can resist him." "Children have this natural ability to teach us about forgiveness," said Jessica, looking into the baby's eyes. "They don't hold grudges, don't worry about the past. They simply love and trust." "That's why you're so good with them," said Rachel. "Do you understand that purity?" Derek approached and gently touched Ethan's small hand. "It's been 2 years since I've held a baby," he said softly. "Want to try?" offered Jessica. Derek took Ethan with the care of an experienced professional, but Rachel noticed his hands trembled slightly. It was evident that moment was bringing back intense memories. "Daniel was this age when he started talking," said Derek. His voice choked. His first words were "mommy" and "daddy," of course, but the third was "boo-boo." He always worried when someone got hurt. "It seems he inherited compassion from both of you," observed Rachel. "Or perhaps we learned compassion from him," said Jessica. "Children teach us so much about how to be human. And that's why you need to return to working with children," said Rachel firmly. "Not despite having lost Daniel, but because of him. Because of everything he taught you about love, compassion, and care." Ethan smiled at Derek, one of those spontaneous baby smiles that melt any heart. The impact was visible. Derek closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and when he opened them again, there was a different resolution in them. "All right," he finally said, "let's seriously talk about going back." "Seriously?" asked Jessica, hopeful. "Seriously," confirmed Derek, "but we'll do it our way. We don't want to return to exactly the life we had before. We want to build something new. Something that honors Daniel," added Jessica. "And something that honors you, too," said Rachel. "You deserve a second chance to make a difference in the world." Madison and Olivia, who had stayed quiet watching the adults talk, approached again. "The baby likes Uncle," observed Olivia. "Yes, he does," confirmed Rachel. "Uncle Derek knows how to take care of babies." "Will you be our friends when we go back home?" asked Madison. "We'd like that very much," replied Jessica, "if your mother allows it." "Of course," said Rachel. "Actually, I was thinking, when you decide to leave here, you might need a temporary place to stay while you get your lives in order." "What do you mean?" asked Derek. I have a small house in the city, explained Rachel. It's not much, but it has an extra room you could use while you decide where you want to live and work. We can't accept that, protested Jessica. It would be too much to ask. You're not asking, said Rachel. I'm offering. And you know why? Because you gave me something today that I haven't had in a long time. What was it? Asked Derek. Hope, said Rachel simply. Hope that it's possible to start over after a devastating loss. Hope that pain can be turned into something constructive. And hope that I'm not the only person in the world trying to be a good mother in difficult circumstances. But we're the ones who learned from you, said Jessica. You showed us that it's possible to face reality instead of running from it. Then we learn from each other, said Rachel, and that's exactly what should happen between people who care about each other. The rest of the evening passed in an atmosphere of cautious hope. Jessica and Derek showed the children some of the simple projects they had developed during their 2 years in the cave: small wooden carvings, medicinal herb gardens, simple rainwater collection systems. But more important than the practical activities was the transformation Rachel observed in the couple. As they naturally interacted with the 3 children, they gradually reconnected with who they really were beneath the primitive mask they had created. Jessica automatically slipped back into pediatrician mode when Olivia complained of a stomachache after eating too much fruit. She asked specific questions, checked symptoms, and prepared a soothing tea with the precision of an experienced professional. Derek in turn noticed that Madison was quieter than usual and gently took her aside to talk. With patience and technique, he discovered the girl was worried they were disrupting the primitive couple's life. "Why do you think you're disrupting?" asked Derek, using exactly the tone and approach a child psychologist would use. "Because you were happy here alone," explained Madison, "and now you're sad because of the things Mom said about going back to the city." "Oh, I see," said Derek. "You're worried that our sadness is your fault." "Yes," confirmed Madison, with the direct honesty of children. "Madison, can I tell you a secret?" said Derek, kneeling to be at eye level with her. "Okay." "We were already sad before you came here," he explained. "We'd been sad for a long, long time. The difference is that now we're beginning to understand that being sad doesn't have to mean being alone." "So we helped?" asked Madison, hopeful. "You helped a lot," Derek confirmed. "Derek, you reminded us of important things we'd forgotten." "What things?" Madison wanted to know. "That taking care of children makes us happy, that helping families is what we do best, and that even when we lose something very important, we can still find purpose by helping other people." Madison smiled, satisfied with the explanation, but then she asked a question that took Derek by surprise. "Your little boy who went to heaven, would he like us?" Derek felt his eyes fill with tears, but they were different tears from those he'd shed over the past 2 years. "He would love you," he said with certainty. "He would love having little sisters to teach things to and protect." "So can we pretend we're his sisters?" asked Madison. "Just sometimes when you feel really sad?" The question broke down the last wall of resistance Derek had built around his heart. He pulled Madison into a hug, finally understanding what Rachel had been trying to explain throughout their conversation. Daniel hadn't gone away forever. He remained alive in the love they had to offer other children, in the compassion they could show other families, in the wisdom they'd gained through loss and could use to help people going through similar difficulties. "Yes," Derek told Madison, "you can be his heart sisters, and we can be your heart uncles too." When Rachel saw the scene, she knew the transformation had happened. Derek and Jessica were ready to return to the world and use their pain constructively. "Looks like you've already started practicing family therapy again," she observed with a smile. "I guess we have," Derek agreed, still holding Madison. "And you know what? It feels right. It feels like this is what we should be doing." "Because it's who you've always been," said Rachel. "You just needed to give yourselves time to figure out how to keep being that after the loss." The next morning, Jessica woke up earlier than everyone and prepared a special breakfast. For the first time in 2 years, she cooked thinking about the pleasure of feeding a family, rather than just meeting a basic survival need. When everyone was gathered eating, she made an announcement. "Derek and I talked all night," she said, And we decided we're going to accept your offer, Rachel. We're coming back with you. Really? Olivia asked excitedly. You're going to live near us? For a while, Derek confirmed, while we organize our new life. And what kind of new life are you thinking of? Asked Rachel. We want to start small, Jessica explained. Maybe work as independent consultants first, help families individually while we develop our idea for the recovery center. And we want to do it in your area, Derek added, if you don't mind the company. I'd love the company, Rachel said honestly. And I think your daughters would too. Will we get to play with you all the time? Asked Madison. Not all the time, Jessica said, laughing, but often. And maybe you could help us understand what children like for when we start working with other families. Would that be like a job? Asked Olivia, impressed. It would be like being our chosen family, said Derek, the people we choose to love and care for, even if we're not blood relatives. Rachel felt her heart warm at those words. She had left home the previous day just for a simple walk with the children and was returning with a new extended family. There's one condition, she said. You have to let me help with the recovery center project. I discovered yesterday that I have ideas about it I didn't know I had. What kind of ideas? Asked Jessica. Ideas on how to structure a program that's welcoming for single mothers, said Rachel. On how to create safe spaces for non-traditional families, on how to help people rebuild their identities after devastating losses. You want to become our partner in this? Asked Derek, surprised. I want to become part of the solution, said Rachel. For years I felt alone dealing with my problems. If I can help create something that would prevent other families from feeling that way, then I want to be part of it. But you don't have formal training in the field, observed Jessica. No, but I have lived experience, said Rachel. And you showed me yesterday that sometimes lived experience is as valuable as academic training. That's true, agreed Derek. In fact, our experience of loss taught us things we never learned in college. Then let's be a team, said Jessica. A pediatrician, a psychologist, and a mother who knows how to start life over from scratch. And 3 very important assistants, added Rachel, looking at her daughters. Assistants? Asked Madison excitedly. Of course, said Derek. You'll be our official consultants on what makes a place fun and welcoming for children. It's the best job in the world, declared Olivia. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. The process of leaving the cave was more complex than anyone had imagined. Jessica and Derek had accumulated far more belongings than it appeared from the outside. Besides the basic furniture and survival equipment, they had boxes and more boxes of professional books, research they had continued doing during their isolation, and materials related to Daniel that they couldn't leave behind. You never really stopped studying, observed Rachel, flipping through some of the scientific articles Derek had printed over the last 2 years. It's impossible for us not to research, admitted Jessica. Even here, far from everything, we kept up with developments in the field. It's like a compulsion. A healthy compulsion, corrected Rachel. It shows you never really lost your passion for the profession. Among the materials they were organizing, Rachel found something unexpected. A detailed journal Jessica had kept during the 2 years of isolation. May I? She asked, holding the notebook. You may, said Jessica, though with some hesitation, but it's intense, especially the first months. Rachel read a few random pages and was impressed. What she found wasn't just a record of pain and self-pity, but a deep professional analysis of the stages of grief, coping techniques, and discoveries about emotional recovery. Jessica, this is pure gold, she said excitedly. You documented the entire grieving process from both a personal and professional perspective. This could be the foundation for a book, a course, an entire therapeutic protocol. You think so? Asked Jessica, genuinely surprised. I was just trying to understand what was happening to us. Exactly, said Rachel. And this combination of professional knowledge with personal experience is exactly what other grieving families need. Someone who can say, I know scientifically why you're feeling this, and I know emotionally what it's like to go through it. Derek approached to see what they were talking about. She's right, he said, reading over Rachel's shoulder. You documented things no academic study could capture. How so? Asked Jessica. Like the fact that grief isn't linear, explained Rachel, pointing to a specific passage. Here you write about how you can go weeks feeling better, and then a smell, a song, a photo of an unknown child can bring it all back as if it were the first day. That's something any grieving person would recognize immediately, added Derek, but it's rarely explained properly in self-help books. You could use this to create workshops, suggested Rachel. Sessions where you share both the theory and the real experience. Workshops on parental grief, murmured Jessica, considering the idea. Not just parental grief, said Rachel. Family grief of any kind. Parents who've lost children, children who've lost parents, families torn apart by betrayals, families separated by circumstances. There are so many different types of family loss. And they all have common elements, agreed Derek. The feeling of having failed, the guilt, the desire to escape reality. The difficulty of trusting again, added Rachel, thinking of her own experience. The feeling that it will never be possible to be completely happy again. But also the elements of recovery, said Jessica, flipping through more pages of the diary. The small victories, the moments of hope, the rediscovery of purpose. You're creating a therapeutic model right before our eyes, observed Rachel, impressed. During the 3 days it took to organize everything and make the journey back to civilization, the ideas for the project kept developing. The children, who initially were just having fun with the adventure, began contributing surprisingly deep observations. Why do adults think pretending they're not sad will make the sadness go away? Asked Madison one afternoon, while they watched Derek and Jessica carefully packing some of Daniel's mementos. The question took everyone by surprise. What do you mean by that, sweetie? Asked Rachel. It's just that adults always say it's okay when it's not, explained Madison. But when you said you were sad yesterday, you seemed more normal. More normal how? Asked Jessica, curious. Less scary, said Olivia, joining the conversation. When adults pretend they're not sad, they get weird. But when they say they're sad, we know we can talk about sad things too. Derek and Jessica exchanged meaningful looks. Children understand pretense better than we imagine, said Derek, and they feel safer with emotional authenticity. That should be one of the basic principles of our work, said Jessica. No pretending everything's okay when it's not. And no pretending the pain goes away quickly, added Rachel. Honesty about how long things actually take to get better. Are you going to help families not pretend? Asked Olivia. Yes, said Jessica. We're going to help families be honest about how they're feeling so they can start feeling truly better. That's really cool, declared Madison. I hate when adults lie about being okay. That night, the last they would spend in the cave, Rachel couldn't sleep. She slipped out quietly and sat at the cave entrance watching the stars and reflecting on everything that had happened over the past few days. Derek joined her after a few hours. Can't sleep either? He asked. I'm thinking too much, admitted Rachel, about how life can change completely in just a few days. Are you having regrets? Asked Derek. Maybe it was impulsive of us to accept completely changing our lives based on a few hours of conversation. No, said Rachel quickly. I don't have regrets. I'm excited and a little scared, but mostly excited. Why? Derek wanted to know. Because for the first time in years, I feel like I'm walking toward something instead of just running away from something, explained Rachel. When my marriage ended, I focused only on surviving. Then I focused only on being a good enough mother. But now I feel like we can create something that goes beyond just surviving. Something that will help other people do more than just survive too, agreed Derek. Exactly, said Rachel, and this feeling of shared purpose. It had been a long time since I felt that. They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Then Derek spoke again. Rachel, can I ask a personal question? Of course. Have you really forgiven yourself for what happened with your marriage? He asked. Or do you still carry guilt like we used to? Rachel thought carefully before answering. I think I've learned to live with the guilt, she said finally. I don't know if that's the same as self-forgiveness, but I've learned that guilt can be a motivator if you don't let it paralyze you. How so? Asked Derek. Well, my guilt for the mistake I made motivates me to be a better mother every day, explained Rachel. It motivates me to be more honest with the children, more present, more aware of the consequences of my choices. It's not a guilt that destroys me, it's a guilt that builds me up. That's interesting, said Derek thoughtfully. Maybe that's what we need to learn to do with our guilt over Daniel's death. Turn it into constructive motivation instead of destructive. Exactly, agreed Rachel. You can use the pain of loss to become better, more compassionate, more effective professionals. Guilt can be the fuel that makes you never give up on a family, never stop fighting for a child. Daniel can keep saving lives through your work, she added. It's not an easy comfort. It doesn't take away the pain of loss, but it gives meaning to the suffering. You have impressive wisdom for someone who hasn't studied psychology, observed Derek. I studied at the University of Hard Knocks, said Rachel with a sad smile. It's a college no one chooses, but it teaches lessons you don't learn anywhere else. The next morning they officially began the journey back, but it wasn't a melancholy farewell to the cave. On the contrary, there was a feeling of expectation in the air, as if they were preparing for a new adventure. The kids were thrilled with the idea of having aunt and uncle living near them. Jessica and Derek were nervous but determined, and Rachel felt an energy she hadn't experienced in years. When they finally reached Rachel's house in the small town near Deer Ridge Wilderness, it was clear that this was only the beginning of a much larger transformation. The house, which had always seemed too small for Rachel and the 3 children, somehow perfectly accommodated the couple too. It was as if the space had expanded to welcome the love and hope they brought with them. In the first days, Derek and Jessica focused on readjusting to life with constant electricity, running water and internet access. But soon they were using these conveniences to research everything about how to create a family recovery center. We need a name for the project, said Jessica one afternoon, while they were making plans at the kitchen table. How about Daniel Center, suggested Olivia, who was coloring nearby. The silence that followed was profound. Derek and Jessica looked at each other, their eyes filling with tears. Daniel Center, repeated Jessica softly, to honor his memory by helping other families. It's perfect, said Derek, his voice choked. Would he like that? Asked Madison, noticing the adult's emotion. He would love it, said Jessica. He always liked helping others. So it's decided, declared Rachel. Daniel Center will be the name of our project. In the weeks that followed, Rachel's home turned into an informal planning and research hub. Derek and Jessica spent their days studying existing recovery center models, while Rachel contributed insights about the practical needs of families in crisis. The children, in turn, became unexpectedly valuable consultants. They tested educational materials, assessed the suitability of spaces for different age groups, and offered perspectives on what really worked to make a child feel safe and welcome. It was Olivia who made the observation that completely changed the project's direction. "Why don't you test your ideas with us first?" she asked one afternoon. "What do you mean, sweeties?" asked Jessica. "Well, we're a family that's been through hard things," explained Olivia, with the simple logic of children. "You've been through hard things too. Why don't you do your program with our family first to see if it works?" The suggestion was so obvious that none of the adults had thought of it. "She's right," said Rachel slowly. "We're exactly the kind of family the center would serve. A single mother dealing with trauma and guilt, children processing paternal abandonment, professionals trying to recover from a devastating loss. We could create a pilot program," said Derek, excited. "Test all our theories at home with you before offering it to other families. And document the whole process," added Jessica, "to create a replicable protocol." That's how the first version of the Daniel Center program was born, a family recovery model, tested on the very family that had conceived it. For 3 months, Rachel and the children participated in structured therapeutic activities every morning. There were individual sessions where each could talk about their feelings and fears, family sessions where they discussed challenges together, and practical activities that helped them build trust and connection. What impressed everyone most was how the children themselves became active agents of healing, not just passive recipients of therapy. "Madison, have you noticed any changes in your mum since we started the sessions?" asked Derek during a family session. Yes, said Madison thoughtfully. She doesn't stay up at night worrying about money anymore, and she laughs more. And what do you think contributed to that change? Continued Derek. I think she doesn't feel alone anymore, answered Madison. Now she has you to share the worries with. And how does that make you feel? Asked Jessica. Safer, admitted Madison. When Mommy was always worried, I would get worried too. Now I know you'll help take care of us. These observations from the children became fundamental to refining the program. They revealed how parents' feelings directly affected the children's emotional well-being, and how the sense of community and support was essential for the whole family. Ethan, despite being just a baby, also contributed unexpectedly. His presence forced everyone to maintain healthy routines, to focus on the present instead of getting lost in past traumas, and to experience simple joy daily. Babies are natural therapists, observed Jessica one afternoon, after Ethan had managed to make everyone laugh with his antics. They force us to live in the present moment. And they remind us that life goes on, added Derek. That even in the midst of pain there's growth, there's development, there's future. After 6 months of living together and developing the program, they had something solid and proven effective. But more important than that, they had truly become a family. Not a traditional family, but something new and special. A chosen family, united not by blood but by shared experiences, mutual support and common purpose. It was at that moment they received a visit that would change everything once again. Barbara, Daniel's former nanny, appeared at the door on a rainy afternoon, bringing unexpected news. I found other families, she said, without preamble as soon as she sat down in the living room. Families going through the same thing you went through. What do you mean? Asked Jessica. After you disappeared, I started attending a support group for people who feel guilty about childhood accidents, explained Barbara. It was the only way I found to deal with my guilt over Daniel's death. Derek and Jessica exchanged glances, surprised. They had never considered that Barbara also carried trauma from losing Daniel. In the group, I met other people, continued Barbara, nannies who went through similar situations, but also parents who lost children under different circumstances. And when I told them about you two, about how you were amazing professionals who disappeared after the tragedy, several people said they'd really like to talk with you. They want therapy with us? Asked Derek. They want hope, said Barbara. They want to see that it's possible to survive what they're going through. They want to meet professionals who truly understand their pain. How many people? Asked Rachel. In my group, 12 families, said Barbara, but the group is just a small sample. There are many more people who need help. Jessica stood up and began pacing the room, visibly agitated. I don't know if we're ready for this, she said. The program is still very new. We're still testing. Jessica, Rachel interrupted gently, you've helped my family enormously over the past few months. The program works. You know it works. But what if we make mistakes? Asked Derek. What if we can't help everyone? Then you'll have made mistakes while trying to help, said Rachel, echoing the very words she had used months earlier in the cave. Which is better than succeeding at not trying anything. Barbara watched the conversation with interest, realizing she was witnessing a crucial decision-making moment. What exactly are you discussing? She asked. Rachel, Derek, and Jessica took turns telling her about the Daniel Center, about the program they had developed, about their plans to create a family recovery center. This is exactly what the families in my group need, said Barbara when they finished. You have to make this happen. But we need resources, proper space, official licenses, began Jessica. And courage to take the first step, added Derek. You already took the first step, reminded Rachel, when you decided to leave the cave, when you decided to stop running from the pain and start turning it into something constructive. She's right, agreed Barbara, and I can help you with resources. The support group I attend is connected to a church that has available space and interest in community projects. Really? Asked Jessica, hopeful. Really, confirmed Barbara. They became very interested when I told them about you two. The community is looking for ways to support families in crisis. In the weeks that followed, everything accelerated in an almost surreal way. The church not only offered free space for the Daniel Center, but also helped connect them with other professionals in the field who wanted to volunteer. A lawyer specializing in non-profit organizations offered to help with legal documentation. An experienced social worker wanted to join the team. A retired educator offered their expertise to develop activities for different age groups. But the most important thing was the family's response. When Barbara took the first group to learn about the program, the reaction was immediate and powerful. "You really understand," said a mother who had lost a child in a drowning. "It's not just theoretical knowledge, you actually know what it's like. And you show that it's possible to keep living," added a father struggling with depression after losing a daughter in a car accident. "Not just surviving, but truly living again." The first official pilot group at the Daniel Center had 8 families, including Rachel's. During 3 intensive months, they went through all the program's stages: individual trauma processing, family discussions about how to move forward, practical activities for rebuilding trust and purpose. The results exceeded all expectations. Not only did the families show significant improvements in emotional well-being, but many became permanent support networks for each other. "It's like we've created a new form of extended family," observed Rachel during a program evaluation. "A chosen family based on shared experiences," agreed Jessica. "And most importantly, a family that grows," added Derek. "Every new family we help becomes able to help other families too." It was Olivia who made the final observation that perfectly defined what they had created. "You know what's cool about the Daniel Center?" she said one afternoon after an especially emotional session. "What is it, sweetie?" asked Jessica. "It's that everyone here used to be really sad, but now everyone's helping other people be less sad," said Olivia. "It's like sadness turned into a superpower." The 6-year-old's words perfectly captured the essence of what they had managed to create. A place where pain wasn't denied or minimized, but transformed into strength to help others. 6 months after the first official session, the Daniel Center had served more than 50 families. There was a waiting list. Other organizations were interested in replicating the model in different cities. More important than the numbers, however, was the personal transformation everyone had experienced. Derek and Jessica were no longer the professionals they had been before Daniel's death, but they also weren't the broken people who had hidden in the cave for 2 years. They were something new, professionals who had integrated their personal experience of loss into their practice, creating a type of care that was both technically competent and deeply human. Rachel had discovered a vocation she never knew she had. Her ability to connect with other mothers in difficult situations, combined with her practical experience of family rebuilding, made her an integral part of the therapeutic team. The children, in turn, had grown up in an environment where family differences were celebrated rather than problematized, where difficult emotions were openly discussed, and where helping others was a natural part of daily life. Ethan, now nearly 2 years old, had grown up surrounded by a community of adults who loved him, and children of various ages who treated him like a younger brother. For him, having multiple parental figures and dozens of siblings from different families was simply normal. "He'll never know what it feels like to be alone in the world," observed Rachel one afternoon, watching Ethan play with a group of children whose families were in the program. "None of these children will," agreed Jessica. "We've created an emotional safety net that will last their entire lives." It was a Saturday afternoon, 1 year after Rachel had first gotten lost on the trail and found the cave. They were organizing a birthday party for the Daniel Center with all the families who had participated in the program. The space the church had lent was decorated with drawings made by the children, written testimonials from the parents, and photographs of the various activities they had carried out throughout the year. Barbara was there, of course, now officially part of the team as community coordinator. Several volunteer professionals moved around the space, talking with families and planning future expansions of the program. But the most exciting moment of the party was when Derek and Jessica made a special announcement. "We wanted to share some news with you," Derek said to the gathered group. "After a lot of thought and planning, we decided to make official something that had already been happening naturally. Rachel agreed to become our official partner in creating a foundation," Jessica continued. The Daniel Foundation will expand the center's work to other regions, train other professionals in our model, and ensure that this kind of care is available to many more families. The applause was deafening, but for Rachel, the most meaningful moment was seeing her 3 daughters cheering enthusiastically, completely integrated into that community they had helped to create. "Mom, does this mean we're going to help even more families?" asked Madison. "Yes, my love," replied Rachel. "Many more." "And what about Daniel?" asked Olivia. "Will he be happy about this?" Derek knelt beside Olivia, his eyes shining with tears of joy. "Olivia, I think Daniel is very proud to see how many families are being helped because of the love we feel for him," he said. "I think he's happy because his memory is saving other children." "So we're going to keep saving more?" asked Olivia. "We'll keep going forever," promised Jessica. The party continued late into the night, with children playing, parents sharing stories of recovery, and the whole community celebrating not only the success of the center, but the proof that it was possible to transform the most devastating losses into strength to help others. When it was finally time to go home, Rachel found herself standing at the center's door looking back one last time. "What are you thinking about?" asked Derek, approaching. "I'm thinking about how strange life is," said Rachel. "A year ago, I was lost on a trail, desperate and alone with 3 small children. I thought I was living the worst day of my life. And now?" asked Jessica, joining the conversation. "Now I realize that was the best day of my life," said Rachel, "because it was the day that led me to you, the day that changed everything for the better." "For us too," said Derek. "If you hadn't asked the right questions, if you hadn't refused to accept our evasions, we would still be in the cave. Pretending we were healed, when in fact we were just hiding," added Jessica. "But do you know what's most amazing?" said Rachel. "What?" they both asked together. "Daniel was saved too," said Rachel. "Not in the physical sense, obviously, but in the sense that his memory, his love, his purpose, all of that was saved. Instead of being just a tragedy, his life became a continuing force of healing in the world." "He keeps saving lives," agreed Derek, his voice choked. "And he'll keep saving them for the next 50 years, said Jessica. "Through your work, through the families you help, through the children who grow up knowing they are loved and supported. It's the best form of immortality I can imagine," said Rachel. They stood there for a few more minutes, in comfortable silence, each lost in their own thoughts about the incredible journey they had made together. Finally, Madison appeared at the door. "Mom, we're ready to go home," she announced. "We're coming, sweetie," said Rachel. But as they walked to the car, Derek made one last observation that perfectly summed up everything they had discovered. "You know, Rachel, I think we've discovered something important about what home means," he said. "What is it?" she asked. "Home isn't a place where you hide your pains," said Derek. "Home is a place where your pains are transformed into love for others." "And where you never have to go through anything alone," added Jessica. "And where every person who arrives broken leaves whole and ready to help the next person who arrives broken too," Rachel concluded. As they drove home that night, with the children sleeping in the back seat and the promise of more meaningful work days ahead, Rachel couldn't stop smiling. She had begun that journey as a single mother lost on a trail. She was ending it as co-founder of an organization that would change the lives of hundreds of families, surrounded by a chosen family she deeply loved, and with a clear purpose that would give meaning to the rest of her life. It wasn't the ending she would have imagined when she was lost in the forest a year ago. It was much, much better. End of story. So, dear listeners, what did you think of this incredible journey? Do you believe it's possible to transform our greatest pains into strength to help others? Tell us in the comments how this story touched you, and if you know someone who could benefit from a message like this. Leave a like if you were as moved as we were, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories that show how love and hope always find a way. Thank you so much for joining us in this touching story.